Hello, I'm Douglas Anderson, and this is Artists and Authors. We're broadcasting from the prestigious 9 West 57th building on Billionaires Row in New York City, at the wonderful 8.5 restaurant located in the bottom of that building. An appropriate place for our first author, Brad Birkenfeld, author of Lucifers Banker, Uncensored. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Doug, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Tell us about your background and why you wrote this book.
Well, my background, I grew up in the Boston area. I was the youngest of 3 boys, and I went to school in Boston, to private school, and then I went to military school in Vermont, and then studied in London economics, and then started working in Boston as a banker at State Street Bank. After that, I moved over to Switzerland and got my master's degree in finance, and then started working for Credit Suisse, Barclays Bank, and UBS in Switzerland.
So full disclosure, I met you in 2017, and I was actually kind of shocked. I was a speaker for NASDAQ at a conference in Europe, and sitting in the crowd kind of half asleep, and then all of a sudden you were introduced as the world's biggest whistleblower. And as you began to speak, I realized that, hey, you were the guy who upended secret bank accounts in Switzerland. And that was an amazing, major shift on Wall Street when that happened. Tell us about that.
It was a major shift, and it was that no one else ever had the courage or the information to come forward. Law enforcement always complained they couldn't crack Swiss bank secrecy. Bankers always kept their mouth shut and never disclosed. But the problem was that there was such illegal conduct going on the US desk and all the other desks at UBS in Switzerland, that I felt compelled to come forward and expose what I had been seeing and working in for several years at UBS in Geneva. The problem was we had 19,000 clients, $20 billion in assets of just Americans. Now, you have to understand, and the audience has to understand, that the minimum account size was $1 million. So if you had that much to put in a Swiss numbered account, you were probably quite wealthy in America where you resided. So this really gives an image of the total wealth and deception that was going on for decades. And why the DOJ and the FBI could never uncover it, well, that's been a mystery to this day. That's why whistleblowers are needed to come forward and do the right thing and expose waste, fraud, and corruption, as I did in this case.
Yeah, well, congratulations. And I've read the book. You've actually got 2 books. The first book I read, Lucifers Banker, it's a page turner. I mean, I burned through that thing. It's an amazing book. So tell us what happened to you at UBS, and how did you come to write the book?
Well, I worked as a director at UBS in Geneva, Switzerland, and I was the head of business development for North America. And while I was doing that business there back in the early 2000s, I began to see that we had clients that were just putting money in Switzerland to either hide it from the tax man or hide it from a business partner or from a spouse. And that really wasn't our business. We were doing the banking, but Switzerland allowed for this type of facility to go on. The problem is that when you start talking about cross-border transactions where the US has certain tax laws that conflict with Swiss non-tax laws. And that's really where the problem is. And that's where I complained. And I complained vehemently to my management as well as to legal and compliance on several occasions in writing and verbally. And they ignored me as a director. So I had no choice but to resign. But I wasn't going to just resign and give up my career. I felt as though compelled actually to come forward and expose this, because if I didn't, then it would have continued. So that's exactly what I did. I came to my own government, the Department of Justice, the IRS, the SEC, and the US Senate. But what I found out, Doug, was that my government was as corrupt, if not more corrupt, than the Swiss government. You figured you would come to your own government who would actually assist you in exposing the largest and longest running tax scandal in the world. And the very fact that they were so hostile towards me and didn't want to give me a subpoena, which is very simple. Later, the US Senate was happy to give me a subpoena, and it took them about a week to do so. So I guess the Department of Justice is more interested in, maybe eating donuts than
Well, I
issuing
can't
subpoenas.
understand the reasoning behind not issuing a simple subpoena unless they're trying to hide something, maybe political donors or something like that. I don't know. But so tell me more about you submitted 20,000 names.
Well, I first went to the DOJ and then to the IRS, SEC, and US Senate, but it was 19,000 American clients with $20 billion in assets.
Okay.
And what had happened there was I didn't have every single name, but I had a lot of them. And some of the names that I gave, and I gave them before the voluntary disclosure programs were implemented. And the IRS commissioner himself said under oath, if we have an ongoing investigation or we have your name, you are not, repeat, not allowed to come into the program. Well, I gave up Leonard Lauder, a billionaire here from New York, Jack Manning, a billionaire from Boston, Kevin Costner, Hollywood actor, and the list went on. But nothing's happened to these people. Why? They didn't want to give me credit for those, so they buried those names. So the American people should actually be outraged because everyone else pays their taxes, but these millionaires and billionaires get to walk scot-free.
And that comes into one of the reasons the book is called Uncensored. Your first book came out. Why did you write another book?
That's a great question. When I wrote my first book, and actually no publisher would publish my book, it came out right before the election because it intimately involved President Obama, Attorney General Eric Holder, and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. It was a cabal. These people were part of the cover-up and the corruption that runs deep within our government. Why? Because Barack Obama was accepting money from the chairman of UBS, Robert Wolf, in this town, put him on two of his committees at the White House. At the very same time, he was not attending as a senator, a sitting senator, the committee I testified in front of for 10 hours, never showed up for a hearing. But yet he was accepting millions of dollars on the investigation he should have been conducting. Eric Holder at his law firm in Washington, Covington and Burling. His biggest client was representing UBS. Hillary Clinton and her husband received millions of dollars in speaking fees from UBS. So why is it that Hillary Clinton was put in charge of an international criminal investigation of this magnitude?
No, she was Secretary of State at the time, not head of the Treasury or head of the Department of Justice.
No, that's exactly
so
right.
that's a very good question.
And people should be asking this question. Whether it was a long time ago or not, it shows the ingrained corruption, and it shows how the government has all worked together. Now, that's called a conspiracy, quite frankly.